deals in structure, it deals in hierarchy, and it deals in apartness. Sees everything as a part.
And polarization.
Yeah, and if that's what you are, if that's the way you're seeing life, in terms of hierarchical structures and apartness and competition and all this stuff, you're in mind. Ironically, the religions are in mind, and they're all mind constructs, they're religions. That's why they have rules and regulations. That's another massive red light. Hey, mind, and that's rules and regulations and laws.
And limitation.
Limitation, sense of limitation. So if we can change our point of observation, so we cease to see ourselves vitally and the world we think we're living in those terms, and look at it from a point of view of consciousness. I said earlier that this force that's been kind of pushing me through my last 20 years took me through synchronistic experiences to understand a five-sense level of the conspiracy, then moved into the interdimensional connection and the reptilian connection to these families. And since 2003, it's taken me into what I know is by far the most important, and that is understanding the nature of reality. Because, you know, how can you get a grasp of your own life and take any kind of control of your own experience if you don't know who you are, where you are, or the nature of the world you're living in? And this information for me is by far the most important, because it moves the point of experience from in this world to observing this world, or a mixture of the two. And that, if you're in this world and you're of this world, then what's coming is going to be a bloody nightmare. If you become the observer as well as the experiencer, by becoming more conscious, then it's much easier, because that's not you, that's your experience which you're observing. And
absolutely. This is something that George Green says he was in contact with the Plejarians, and that they helped, you know, write a book through him that says that exact thing, that you need to stay in the observer mode.
Exactly.
And observe what's going on and not get caught up in the experience in such a way that actually, as you say, you become of this world instead of in it but not of it.
Yeah, and what I found as I'm talking more and more about the reality we live in is it does, if you like, take the edge off the fear of what's happening, because it is funny, really. I think that when we find out everything that's going on and the nature of what we're experiencing and what's behind it, I think we're going to laugh for weeks. I do. I think we're going to laugh for weeks. And we thought it was that. Oh my God. And the whole thrust of the maze and opening and closing doors since 2003 for me, and it's getting more and more deep and deeper and deeper, is what is reality, who are we, what we're doing here, and how do we interact with it? And it's very clear to me that this is a virtual reality universe of enormous advancement compared with what we perceive to be virtual reality simulations in this world. And, you know, this is not just supposition, this is provable scientific fact.
I mean, it's so good that we think it's real.
Yeah. Sure. You know, the five senses just decode vibrational information into electrical signals, send it to the brain, and the brain decodes it into this construct that we think is outside there, but it's actually inside us. The only place this world exists, a so-called solid world, a three-dimensional world, is out there. Out there, we think, but actually it doesn't exist out there. Out there is just vibrational fields. It exists in here as we construct it, and even the brain is a decoded construct as well. It's on an energetic level that we do the decoding, really. And this is very, very important, because what the manipulators do, because they've hoarded this basic knowledge and passed it over at the highest level of the secret society network and sucked it out of public circulation, they know that if we look out there for answers, believing that there isn't out there, instead of an illusory projection that's going on in here, then we're never going to change anything.
Yeah.
Never going to change anything. And once you go, there's no out there, so where's it coming from? Oh, it's coming from in here, so this is where I have to change. Oh, there you go. It's what I call, and this is what most people do because of the suppression of this understanding, is they stand in the movie theater and they shout at the screen because they don't like the movie. Uh-huh. And people say, you're crazy, you're never going to change the movie, shouting at the screen. Go back to the projection room, change the reel if you don't like the movie. And the projection is deep within us, you know. Some research I saw recently says that about only 5% of behavior and decisions that we make are with the conscious mind. I would say that's not correct, personally. I'd say 100% of what happens in this three-dimensional reality, it's only in our head, actually is a projection. And the conscious mind is actually not the decision maker at all. Yeah. It's the observer and experiencer of it. It's like, it literally is the same principle as a movie projector, which comes from within what we call the subconscious, where all those patterns are there which we're being influenced by and are affecting our projection and our reading of it. And it comes out of the subconscious. And by the time it hits the screen in here, symbolically on the movie theater, it's a done deal. This is where the change has to take place within us to change the projection, which is our conscious mind's experience. And people are so caught in the conscious mind as that's the only level. I mean, they hear talk about subconscious and all that stuff, but really it's, I thought it. Well, how come that experiments have shown that the electrical changes and muscular changes to make an action happen happen a split second before the conscious mind has decided to do it? It's because they're playing it out. And so this talk about we must go within, this New Age must go within, and there's much about the New Age I would challenge, but this basic theme is absolutely right, I would say. And what the whole conspiracy is trying to do is get us to look out there. Let's go and protest, let's go and do this, let's go and do that. And you protest, and you have 1 million people on the streets of London protesting against war. And what happens? The war goes on, and then they start another bugger.
And it's just more dialectic.
Yeah, we need to change the projection.
This is actually something that we've come around to. And we're aware that consciousness is where the change has to happen. And then consciousness is actually also where you have to apply the change in your vision of reality. You can't actually just stop there. It actually has to permeate everything. So it needs to be embodied in this body, but we have to talk about who's in control. So if consciousness is in control, and I can use this to do, for example, what we're doing here, which can be used to further change and push the change and help the change, then this is a good thing. But it's not enough, in other words, just to go in like Buddha and simply sit in your mind and do nothing. Because doing nothing is also not the answer. We actually came here with a purpose. A game is being played out here. And if you stay in both consciousness and you're able to change your inner self and then mirror it outside and facilitate, which is what you're doing, obviously. And obviously you embody this in your life. And what we've been doing with Camelot is we're also talking about, you can't actually demonstrate in the streets and get real results, because it's really, action, reaction.
Exactly.
It's really that.
I agree.
But you can join minds and meditate. There are places for action that are actually really proactive and can change the world in a positive way. So it's a very interesting, dilemma for people, that they have to actually embody the change that they see and live it. You cannot be a contradiction to what's inside. It doesn't work. There has to be a through line.
Well, I would put it this way. I would say that, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that this reality, this holographic, illusory physical construct, which we put together in our heads, and it's like a holographic internet, I call it, that is 100% a projection. And by the time it hits this screen, it's a done deal, in our experience. But a lot of people I come across and heard, they do think that if you just sit and meditate or just go within, then that's all you need to do. But this is a projection, and it's a projection from somewhere. So this projection is an open book of the inner us, individually and collectively. So what we play out in this experience says everything about our state of being. And you can say go within, and you can use it as an excuse to not go without. And you could go within, always I go within and I meditate. Okay, so what's happening in the projection as a result of what you're doing? The only projection that you're affecting is you sitting cross-legged in the corner. What else is changing? Yes, of course, you can change things vibrationally to an extent, but, you know, what is happening in the world is saying what's happening in us, and we kind of miss that connection. So if we're doing nothing to make a contribution to the kind of world we like to live in, then in the physical world, then that says something about the state of us within, that we're not doing that. I see so many excuses being made by people who have become to a certain extent aware of some of what's going on, so that they can justify to themselves why they're doing nothing. People say to me, you don't tell us what to do. And I think, well, actually, I talk about becoming conscious and all that stuff. I think, you know, that's the start. But it ain't for me to tell you what to do. Exactly. And if you think that I have to tell you what to do, then you're not listening. Because this is about taking power back to the point where we project, rather than looking out here at a done deal.
Absolutely.
But there's an active paradox here, isn't there? Because that's not the whole story. Otherwise, you'd be sitting in the corner smiling and not talking to us here, and not working as hard as you do, and not talking to people to help the process of waking them up, so that they can then join you in this understanding, which we share with you also. It's important, in a sense, to pretend that all this is real, because this is the platform from which we can waken ourselves up and rejoin consciousness again. And so it's a paradox. It goes on at both levels. What you say is true, and this all is an illusion, and it all doesn't matter, but it's all important enough for us to be talking about it.
What I was saying is that your presentation, where you're talking about consciousness and the mind, and the problems with staying just in mind, because there's a lot of brilliant people out there coming to brilliant conclusions, and yet they can't live it. See, the manifestation doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, it becomes an intellectual, academic kind of point of observation, rather than consciousness, which is something that just is. The difference that I am now increasingly making is between mind and consciousness. And I would go further and say that we talk about my mind, your mind, his mind, her mind. I don't see it like that. I talk about the mind. There is the mind is a construct of the virtual reality universe, which allows us consciousness to interconnect with this virtual reality. It's like a conduit, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever if it serves the experience of consciousness and serves our ability to interact with this virtual reality universe. What has happened, and I would strongly suggest it's been manipulated to happen, not least by these families and other levels of the manipulation, is we have been manipulated into a false identity, which is identifying who we are with mind, which operates immediately, directly through the body, and calls itself David Icke, Ethel Jones, Charlie Smith, looks in the mirror and thinks that's who it is. And basically, you know, this is a biological computer. It's not a computer that just reacts to the way it's programmed to react to data input. It has the ability to, they call them living computers, biological computers. They're trying to build them now, so different parts of the world. It has the ability to assess information and make decisions on it. In other words, to quite a large extent, it has the ability to think. And what happens is, if we get caught in mind and self-identity of that reflection in the mirror is me, then, and not just my experience, then mind starts to govern our sense of reality. And mind is about division, apartness, hierarchy, rules, regulations, laws, limitation. And, you know, you can have someone in the New Age arena who talks about spirituality, talks about other dimensions, and which are other virtual reality games, I would suggest, other levels, but blatantly is stuck in mind and the values of mind. I mean, I hear New Age people talk about the Great White Brotherhood and the hierarchy of the angels and the stuff. That's mind talking. Consciousness doesn't do hierarchy. Exactly. It just is all possibility, all that is. And so the same mind construct, the mind, can entrap a New Ager as it entraps in another part of the mind a Wall Street banker.
It's just another religion. It's another religion.
That's the thing, you know. I was talking on an interview yesterday, and we got into some interesting areas. He asked me about religion. Well, religion and a political party and the New Age and all these things that we don't call religions, institutions, they're all the same construct.
Right.
And because consciousness just is. Consciousness doesn't think. Consciousness knows. That's why consciousness is silent when we access it, because it's got nothing to work out. The mind is where the chatter comes from, because it's constantly trying to work things out. What about tomorrow? What about yesterday? What did she say about me? Silence, consciousness. And so to hold you in mind, and this conspiracy is about holding the population in mind, because then they got you.
Absolutely.
Because that's their stadium mind. They're stuck in mind. If they were conscious, they wouldn't do what they're doing. To hold us in mind, they have to sell us something to rigidly believe in. So religion's brilliant example of rigid belief. And what is it? Once you rigidly believe something, you then call it a name. What are you? You don't say, I'm consciousness. How many people say, hello, who are you? I'm consciousness. Oh, so am I. Nice to meet you. No. What we are is what we do. I'm a journalist. I work in a factory. What are you? I'm a Hindu. I'm a Christian. Now, these are mind constructs. These are mind prisons that limit our sense of self. So once you have a religious belief, then you give it a name. And I have a simple philosophy about all this. If you can tell me what you believe and give it a name, you're in a prison. Because everything just is. We all just are. It's the force with no name, I call it, consciousness. And so you create religion, and then after the name, then comes the rules and regulations, this is how the construct goes, of what you have to conform to if you are going to be allowed to call yourself whatever name that's been come up with. You're not a Christian if you believe that, and all this stuff. But then you look at political parties. You have a group of people, they get together and they want to do something politically. So they give what they're doing a name. Democrats, Republicans, Labour Party, Conservative Party, whatever. So there's the name. Now come the rules and regulations that decide if you can call yourself one of the... You can't believe that and be a conservative. You can't believe that and be a liberal. It's the same construct wherever you look. Yeah. And then the belief system, as research has shown, rigid beliefs, the neurons fire off in a certain network and sequence in line with the belief, because what the brain's doing is then filtering, decoding reality and circumstance through the belief system, which manifests in the brain as the way the neurons fire off. And suddenly, instead of being free thinking, or even better, free knowing, conscious, you are operating in a tiny little box, and that box is basically the way not basically, it is the way your brain decodes reality. And so once you're into belief, rigid belief, then they got you, and that's why they want to sell you rigid beliefs.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But there's an active paradox here, isn't there? Because that's not the whole story. Otherwise, you'd be sitting in a corner smiling and not talking to us here, and not working as hard as you do, and not talking to people to help the process of waking them up so that they can then join you in this understanding, which we share with you also. It's important, in a sense, to pretend that all this is real, because this is the platform from which we can waken ourselves up and rejoin consciousness again. And so it's a paradox. It goes on at both levels. What you say is true, and this all is an illusion, and it all doesn't matter, but it's all important enough for us to be talking about it.
It matches, Jim, in the sense that do we want to experience a reality that's very, very unpleasant and controlling and limiting and frightening and stressful? Or do we want to experience a reality that is loving, kind, where no one goes hungry in a world of plenty, where there is no war, because no one would even consider the idea that it was a possibility or an option? That's the choice we're making. We're always consciousness, and when we leave the body, we'll become much more, at least much more aware of everything than we are now. So we're always conscious. We're all eternal consciousness. But the question is, what kind of experience do we want here?
Exactly.
You know,
Quite, yeah.
that's the choice.
What
Yes.
kind of, we call it, what kind of game do you want to play?
Yeah.
We have a chance now, because we are consciousness, to change the rules of the game, to make it something different than it is. Change inside, but let's also agree, because that's what's happening. That's what a consciousness revolution has to be about. It's not good enough for you, David Icke, to have got it. It's not good enough for us to have got it. What we need is for everyone to get it that's in this game here on this plane, because that's what it's really about. In other words, consciousness, and this is where it gets into what is consciousness. It's love. And what is love? It's actually the awareness of all of us.
Well, I would say everything is consciousness, but mind is consciousness, but it's a much denser expression of consciousness, and that's why it thinks everything in terms of limitation. And as people become conscious, it can, to use the term of a friend of mine in South Africa, consciousness can conscientize mind and bring its awareness out of the level that it currently perceives reality. But I do think it's important that we, if we're going to play this game successfully, that we understand where the game's being played. It's not being played out there. See, what the five senses are doing, like I said earlier, is that they're decoding vibrational information, turning it into electric signals, and the brain then constructs this apparent reality out there, which is actually only in here. So the prime reality is vibrational. That's the prime reality. That's where the change has to take place. Because as the change takes place there, the five senses decode different vibrational states into electrical signals.
Like that wonderful story told by Michael Talbot in The Holographic Universe.
Yeah.
And I read that page over and over again when I first saw that book in the late 1980s. This is the story about the stage hypnotist who hypnotized the father to believe that his father was that his daughter was invisible. Mm-hmm. And then he was able to read an inscription on the watch held behind her body, because for him it was no longer there and reality had changed. It was physically different in his mind.
Well, this is the whole point, you see, that for a hypnotist to put a watch behind someone's back and someone on the other side of her read it, that is perceived to be impossible. But it's only impossible if you believe this world to be solid and real and out there. The reason it could happen is because the prime reality, and this, I can't emphasize this more, the prime reality that is playing out here is vibrational. That has to change or this can't change. And so if the hypnotist, as he did, implanted the program into the guy's brain not to decode the vibrational level, the prime level of his daughter, through this system into a holographic so-called physical form that we see, then he would decode all the other vibrational fields in the room into people and walls and furniture. But because it's like a computer being firewalled off, he doesn't decode the daughter's prime state, your prime state, our prime state, the prime state of everything, this vibration, the vibrational level, into the holographic, apparently out there reality. And so she doesn't exist in his head as a holographic form, i.e. supposedly physical, so he can't see her. Because she's not there, he can see what's behind her. Therefore he can read a watch even though she's standing there to everyone else in the room. They can see her. Why? Because their brain has not been programmed not to read that energy field into a holographic form. Now, just as a quick aside, how many things collectively are we not reading that are there to be read?
Right. Well, one of the things is there's more than 5 senses. Okay, and the heart is, you can't see, it's not just the mind, it's actually the heart. It's really the heart and the intelligence of the heart that he could see through if he would only use that. So it's more than, we have, in other words, these are tools for us. Our mind is a tool, our heart is a tool, but you can't stay up here. You've actually got to go through the heart to really see. See, we don't see with our eyes. That's a construct. That's a
we
mental
see with our brain,
construct. Yeah. We actually see with our heart more than anything else, and through the heart. And so what happens is it's a union between the mind and the heart.
Yeah, I agree.
That allows you to see. And what you could put yourself in that man's position and say, how could the man see through the implant that was put into his brain? First of all, what did he do? He had to accept the magician's implant to begin with. So in the same way, we in society are accepting the implant, whether it's television or whatever, which is blocking our real view of reality. We're accepting it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, that what the hypnotist was doing was just programming the decoding mechanism.
Yes.
And therefore, he didn't decode a vibrational field, i.e. his daughter, into a holographic form. Therefore, he didn't see her. And I completely agree that the heart has the potential to be a massive part of our reality, decoding our reality expression. But we also have to appreciate that this conspiracy, while we see the George Bushes of the world and the Barack Obamas and people like that and the Kissingers, the real level of this conspiracy where the world is being controlled is on a vibrational level. That's why I talk about these reptilians that are doing this and others too, operating outside this reality. They operate in the level of the vibrational level. That's where the manipulation's going. And we need to be kind to ourselves as well in understanding the challenges that we've faced, and not least trying to understand a world that is being manipulated into a state, or has been manipulated into a state, which is to stop us understanding the world. And so, we look at television and the manipulation of television and newspapers and stuff. But that when we see a newspaper or we see a television program, we're just seeing the decoded version of a vibrational field. Those newspapers and those television programs and news programs and all the rest of it, they are actually, quote, physical holographic representations of the prime reality, which is a vibrational field. It's at that level that manipulation we call subliminal, that manipulation we call lying to the people and all the rest of it, actually happens. And so basically what they've done is pull a vibrational veil over us. And if you can make it powerful enough and dense enough, you focus people's sense of perception into such a narrow area that they disconnect from an awareness and therefore a deep effect in their perception of consciousness. You're isolating their point of observation into mind, and that's happening on a vibrational level, which then plays out in what we call the physical world. So what's vital, and this is why this information is so important, not just, I'll tell you what I've found. Nothing represents literally and symbolically the prison than the left brain, which deals in apartness, language, hierarchy, structure, and all this stuff. And the information about the 5 sense conspiracy, I've found, one of its great values is that it operates in a left brain realm when you're explaining how this and that and the other is connected to the same people, and they control that, and this is what they're doing, and these are the techniques they use. That's left brain information. Right. And when people say, oh, you shouldn't put out that information, it's negative, they don't understand that we're looking at a multi-level situation, therefore we have to deal with it on a multi-level basis. That means covering all bases, not just sitting cross-legged on a mountain.
Of course.
Now, what I've found over the years is that once the left brain, because symbolically I see, you know, you've got the left brain, which is what I'm talking about. You've got the right brain, which is a much more out there connection and sees everything in unity, the creativity. And then you've got the bridge, the corpus callosum, which ideally should be sharing information. So you've got a balance. You're in this world and of it, you know. But what the conspiracy does, again, it's all on a vibrational level that it goes in and then it plays out here, is they put symbolically soldiers on the door to the left brain. This is why to progress within this society, one of the most effective ways is to keep passing exams and getting degrees and all this stuff, because that's an exam is, here's some left brain information, now give it me back on a paper telling me what I've told you to believe. Okay, you've done it very well, you've got a first-class degree, a first-class indoctrination often. Now what this conspiracy information on a 5 sense level does, it talks to the left brain in the language the left brain understands. And I've seen it over the time in my personal experience, and of course other people would have seen it. It starts to make the left brain change its sense of reality. And once it starts to change that, it starts to think, well, hold on a second. If everything I thought about the world here was wrong, and it's not like that at all, what the heck else is in this world is not like I thought it was. And I've seen this where people, once that left brain starts this process of withdrawing from a sense of it knows what's going on to I never knew, then it starts to move. And as it starts to move, it literally starts to open to other possibility. And then this movement between the hemispheres can start to happen. And I've seen people who would have laughed in my face about reality and all that stuff, who now encompass it because they went through the process of credible names, dates, places, 5 sense information, explaining logically why the world is not like they thought it was on a 5 sense level. Everything starts to move then. So you know, it's important that the deprogramming of people's manipulated sense of reality happens on multi-levels, not just kind of, you know, we must become spiritual, we must go within, you know. I mean, people say, oh, Alex Jones, he just frightens people and all that stuff. Well, hold on a second. You know, just hold on a second. You know what's negative? It's not information, it's ignorance. That's what's negative, ignorance. And if you want to be ignorant and therefore a manipulator's party trick, then you go ahead. And if you want to look at the information, the 5 sets information that I put out and Alex puts out and people like that and many others, and say it's negative, it's frightening. Well, the fact that you find it frightening instead of empowering because you now understand the game better and therefore you have more power to do something about it, then that is not a statement about those putting the information out. It's a statement about the way you're receiving it.
Exactly. Something that we liked very much was something that George Green said to us in our interview with us April last year. And he used the little analogy. He said, listen, if your car is on a railroad track and there's a train coming down and you don't know that, then, and I don't tell you, then he said, shame on me for not telling you, and shame on you for not knowing. And this is just a nice little way of encapsulating what you're saying.
Yeah, I have an analogy I use very similar to that. I talk about not the hurricane coming, what do you call them? The twisters.
The tornado.
The tornado, yeah. And the tornado's coming, but you have put your head in a bucket of sand because you don't want to face the fact that the tornado's coming. Now, you can hide from that for a while, but you're still there, and the tornado's still coming. And your bum is still in the air, and it's going to get smacked very shortly by a tornado. If you lift your head from the sand, face the situation that you're in, there's a tornado coming, now you have taken power back to yourself by saying, okay, I see the situation now, I can take avoiding action, for my benefit.
Of course.
And this is why it's so important. And I hear people you might call New Age who talk about letting go of fear and taking your power back and come to this workshop and we'll show you how to do it. And then they say, oh, you mustn't talk about this conspiracy, it's too negative.
And
what happened to letting go of fear and all this stuff, you know? And what
these are the guys who hope that the angel Gabriel is going to come and save us. You know?
Yeah, well,
that doesn't work either.
Every level, it seems to me every belief system, every mind construct seems to have a version of the cavalry coming over the horizon. You know, okay, here's the cavalry, okay, here's the cavalry, here's the cavalry, there's the cavalry. And we need to understand that, you know, because if we give our power away to other people, where do those other people actually, where do they actually stand physically as we give our power away to them? Out there, symbolically. So what we're doing is giving our power away into the illusion and then wondering why nothing ever changes. The whole conspiracy, or the foundation of the conspiracy, is to persuade 6 billion people to give their power away every day. And the power used to control is the power these people are saying, thank you very much, thank you very much, thank you very much. Take it back, House of Cards comes down, because that's what it is. It's a House of Cards, and we're holding it together in here. We're constructing the House of Cards in here. Great news, we can bring it down in here.
Right, but I have to say that we're not only going to do that with the mind. That's what's really important here.
No, the mind plays it out. We're going to do it by becoming conscious. That's the point.
Absolutely, but also left brain, right brain. I want to address that a little bit because it's not enough to reconstruct reality based on saying getting to a place where you don't know, and then you're willing to open to a new construction of reality, such that you're going to play the game different, but you're still lodged in the left brain. You must bring in the holistic view, the view that encompasses the heart, that encompasses the female, which is the yin-yang side of things, because what we have here has been playing out for centuries is a really yang view of reality, especially on the western side of the world. And so what I have to say is, it's more than just reconstructing the left brain in a new way to play the game better, because that's actually cheating yourself on another level. So what you need is you need to grow and open the door between the left and the right brain such that there is a flow. And that means that you're talking about the heart, you're talking about senses that are beyond the 5. And so you have to, what you had to do in your own exploration was you never would have gotten the information you wanted to get by staying in the left brain. It actually, as you said, you had physical sensations, they locked your feet, they gave you information that came out of nowhere. You couldn't make logical sense of it. It was, logic goes out the window. So left brain's gone. You know, it's even words are useless when you get into that place. So it's you must actually, it's like traveling in a sense. You must actually travel to a different place. What you do is you follow your intuition.
Right.
You're over on your, I guess they call it the right side of the brain. That's where you are. That's where intuition resides. So you've opened that door. There is a flow, and that's really what has to happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, I take my intuition, which has guided me and has led me to information, and also it's like a filter. I have a vibrational sensation when something is not true and something is true, and another one when it's maybe partly true.
That's holistic.
Yeah, but I still, the left brain's still important on bringing those concepts down into a language of communication that people can assimilate, that are stuck in the left brain. Because if you don't talk in logical, from their perspective, logical terms that the left brain can understand, which is under lock and key, then that key will never open. And that's also why what you just said, that you will except on rare occasions when I'm talking in a very small time scale or doing an interview on a specific subject, I will never talk about the five sense conspiracy without the nature of reality and the influence of the influence of consciousness and all the rest of it. Another point you make is about the heart. I agree. The heart is absolutely at the heart of this and is much more powerful than the brain and much more powerful than the mind, because it is connected, I would say, that what connects us through to consciousness. And this conspiracy also, because, you know, it's a simple thing. In the deep shadows, behind the people in dark suits, are a force, whatever you want to call it, that understands how this works.
Right.
So they've structured a society that is to close down all the channels to consciousness, to isolate us in mind, because then we're playing in their stadium. And one of the key things is to close the heart, to close the heart. And if you want to open the heart and you want to become conscious, it's what I say in my talks, then what we need to do is to ask the question, what would consciousness do at this point? Would consciousness, when we're faced with these set of circumstances, say, well, what's the best outcome for me? No, consciousness will say, what is right, just, fair thing in this situation for me to do? And if we, when we're faced with choices all through the day, ask that question, in this circumstance, what would consciousness do? And act upon it, crucially, then everything changes. And our life changes. Why? Because we are now starting to resonate with consciousness because we're operating in its realm, which is by doing what we say consciousness would do in these circumstances, we are vibrationally locking in to that level and therefore becoming more and more influenced by consciousness. When we say, well, yeah, well, I see that, but I mean, it's not good for me if I do what's right in this situation. I must do what's right for me. That's mind, so that's locking you into mind. You know, this thing about becoming conscious, I see it so often all over the world. I mean, I was in India just before Christmas, and, you know, good luck to them, but they make it sound so complicated. And you know, a lot of the complication, I see this with New Age people that stand on stages and do workshops, not all of them, of course, but I see it with gurus in India and stuff like that. Not all of them, again, but vast numbers of them. The complexity says two things. One, they don't really understand it, because if you really understand something, you can put it in simple language.
I'd agree with
This
that.
is why you get academia repeating jargon, and you say, look, I'm an idiot, mate, okay? I never passed an exam in my life. I left school at 15 to be a professional soccer player. You're going to have to put it in language I can understand. They can't, because they don't really understand it. They're just repeating jargon. And the other side of the complexity of becoming conscious is if you can make it sound complex, then you've taken power over your potential audience.
Absolutely.
That's a big thing.
It's still a power game.
You have to come through me, and the more I make it sound complex, the more power I have, and therefore the more you must come to me, and the longer you must stay with me. And oh, by the way, put the check in the box as you leave. And yet it is so simple. This is the point I would make. People talk about